Stormwater training event. A bit of housekeeping before we get started. The recorded presentations are from 2 to 4:30 p.m. We have attendees that are here virtually as well as in person. I work with the San Diego County Farm Bureau and I'll be assisting with the recording and virtual aspect of the presentation. Virtual attendees, please sign in using the chat function and include your email if you would like to receive the handouts that are also provided to the in-person attendees by email. In-person attendees, please make sure you sign in on the sheet outside in the lobby. The restrooms are in the lobby as well as upstairs, and there are some light snacks and drinks available for attendees. There will be 2 10-minute breaks. After the recorded presentations, there is a Q&A session from 4:30 to 5:30. There's a lot of ground to cover during the presentation, so it might be helpful if you write down your questions and ask them at the end of the presentation or during the last hour. After the recorded presentations, there is also a box for in-person attendees to write down and submit their questions, ideas, suggestions, and requests for additional topics to be covered in similar future events. The QIT box is located in the corner of the room near the door. For our agenda, the lineup of speakers are first, Kimberly with the County of San Diego Agricultural Water Quality Program, followed by presentations from Kaylin with the Region 9 Water Quality Control Board, Jerry with the University of California Cooperative Extension, Isabel with the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and lastly, a presentation by the Department of Agriculture Weights and Measures Pesticides Program with Inspectors Daniel and Sean. Thank you all very much for attending.
All right, thank you, Tasha. Hi, I'm Kim Lee. I work for the County of San Diego Department of Agriculture. Weights and Measures. Can you guys hear me? I thought this isn't on. Is this on? Hello? Is this working now? Okay, hi, I'm Kim Green. I work with the County of San Diego Department of Agriculture, Weights and Measures, Agricultural Water Quality Program, or AWQ program. With this agriculture stormwater training event, the purpose is really to help synthesize farm regulatory requirements as it relates to best management practices to prevent pollution to water resources. Put this together, I worked a lot with Jerry from UCCE. And really, we just brainstormed what we thought would be the best way to provide this kind of.
No pun intended.
What?
Brainstorm, but the stormwater.
Yes, that's exactly right. With that, we decided to focus on best management practices that are relevant to addressing the issues that we see a lot in our region. And with that, Jerry, did you want to add anything? You said you wanted.
Do I look like somebody that wants to add anything? Yes, thank you, Kim. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It's great to see so many interested and enthusiastic people in attendance. How many of you are growers? Oh, almost 2 people, 3, 4. That's great. How many of you are agencies? Wow, lots of agencies. How many of you are neither? And what else could you be? All right.
I'm a student.
Students.
Here from
Students.
college.
Oh, great. Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the County of San Diego for generously providing food.
Thank you, Jerry. Can you guys hear me? It's like it's on.
There it goes.
No? Okay. So before we talk about agriculture best management practices to protect water resources, let's go to the next slide. Oh, dear. So before we talk about agriculture best management practices to prevent water resources, I'll go over some of the basic agriculture water quality program scope and purpose. The County Agriculture Water Quality Program is responsible for ensuring that commercial agriculture sites in the unincorporated County of San Diego are implementing best management practices to prevent pollution to our waterways. We require that agriculture operations implement these practices to prevent things like irrigation runoff and other pollutants generated by agriculture activities from entering into downstream county maintained roads, overs, storm drains. So looking at the map on this slide of San Diego County, we can see that we have several watersheds in our county, most of which drain into the Pacific Ocean. These specific are western draining watersheds comprise the area of the county that have requirements related to the MS4 permit. If you'd like more information about the history of water quality laws and regulations, Jerry and Val with the Irrigated Lands Group have a presentation available online, which you can follow using the link on this slide to view that. And before we go on to the next slide, I wanted to point out that each jurisdiction or state within the county, Western Basin watersheds, is also part of this MS4 permit. I don't recall if I said what an MS4 permit is. That's a municipal storm sewer system permit. And let's see, where am I at? So depending on the jurisdiction that an agriculture site is located within, will also depend on the agency or jurisdiction that you will be looking at for stormwater quality issues. So if you'd like to see the stormwater program context for these other jurisdictions, you can follow the QR code on the slide or the website link to Project Clean Water. Okay, so what are we looking for when we're conducting agricultural water quality site inspections? We're checking that sites are preventing non-stormwater from discharging and implementing best practices to prevent potential pollution. For example, we check that sites discharge potential pollutants like fertilizer, pesticides, and trash in ways that prevent exposure and discharge to stormwater. And we check that if there are areas of erosion and possible sediment discharge. We also check if sites have completed annual stormwater training. All sites inspected by the Agricultural Water Quality Program are required to conduct and document annual stormwater training for all staff who have responsibilities for activities that could result in pollution to water resources. This training today meets that requirement. The form to document this training is included in your packets. It's also available online on the Agricultural Water Quality Program webpage. And I'll be providing that link and QR code later on in this presentation. Lastly, I wanted to touch on the topic of stormwater pollution prevention plan or SWIP document requirements. The SWIP requirement may be required for some agriculture sites. A SWIP is required based on the extent of non-compliance history for a particular site. For example, if the site needs to demonstrate their long-term plans for compliance, or for very low water quality impairments. For example, all sites within the smaller Rainbow Creek sub-watershed are required to have a SWIP document. When we meet with you, we will let you know if your site requires a SWIP document, and we'll provide you all the information and materials you would need with that. That said, it's important to note that more than likely your site will not require a SWIP document. For context, less than 5% of our sites in the inventory require a SWIP document. Okay, on this slide, you can see the general breakdown of violation types, and this is based on data from within the past year. Looking at the pie chart, we can see that of all the inspections conducted, about 29% or 3 in 10 inspections results in a non-compliance or violation that is issued. This means that about every 7 in 10 inspections results in a pass inspection with no violation issued. We can also see that of the inspections conducted, the majority or 18% of those that received violations are issued due to lack of site best management practices to prevent potential pollution discharges. While 6% were for lack of stormwater training documentation, 1% were for lack of the required SWIP document, which would only apply to those few sites that is required, and 3% were for observed active discharge of pollutants. As required by the MS4 permit, we follow up on every violation that we observe to ensure that the site obtains compliance. The standard required by the permit is for compliance to be achieved in 30 days or before the next rain event. Sometimes it does take longer for this to be achieved, such as if sites need to implement new or more advanced best management practices. In these cases, we document the rationale for why it's taking longer. And we work with the agriculture operations to ensure that they are provided with technical resources and other assistance to implement the best management practices that they need. For context, over the last year, less than 3% of sites actually needed more than 30 days to comply. And this was mostly because these sites needed more time to complete their annual stormwater training. It's important to know also that fines are not analogous to violations. As long as the agriculture operation demonstrates timely and appropriate actions to comply with the program, there are generally no fines associated with violations. For context, in the last several years that I've worked for the agriculture water quality program, I am not aware of any fines issued for agriculture water quality program inspections. In terms of our overall enforcement approach, we are aligned with the MS4 permit by focusing first on educating operations about program requirements and providing information on agricultural best management practices. To summarize our approach, we aim to partner with farmers to identify potential areas of pollution and to implement best management practices that prevent potential pollution. So now we're going to look more closely at the most common violations. We see that these can be broken down into 3 categories. First, the site category. This would include best management practices for storage of retired vehicles and vehicle movement areas, dry cleanup or spill response, storage of hazardous materials, and managing agricultural materials and stockpiles. Second, for the paperwork category, the main violation is for lack of stormwater training. We will not focus on SWIFT documentation since this is not a common violation and is not required for most sites. And lastly, for the main non-stormwater discharge violation category, this includes sediment discharges and irrigation runoff or other non-stormwater discharges. In the next several slides, we'll review best management practices or BMPs that address all of these common violations. For storage of retired vehicles and vehicle maintenance areas, agriculture operations need to ensure these are managed to prevent vehicle and mechanical fluids from being exposed to or mixing with stormwater. This means you'll need to store batteries and waste oil in a way that prevents exposure to stormwater, including preventing contact with rain from above and surface stormwater runoff on the ground. You'll also need to maintain farm vehicles to prevent vehicle fluids from mixing with stormwater. This means monitoring your vehicles to identify your leaks and using catch cans when needed. For retired vehicles, these should be drained or have catch cans. And for vehicle maintenance areas, we need to ensure these are managed to prevent discharge of oils and other potential pollutants to the ground and stormwater. Practices, best management practices include conducting vehicle maintenance in the cover and containing all vehicle fluids to prevent them from mixing with stormwater. In the far left picture, we can see containers of waste oils stored outside in containers that are placed on unstable pallets and are at risk of falling over and discharging toxins. In the second photo, we can see containers with waste oil that have residue on the outside of the containers exposed to rain. For these situations, you'll want to ensure the containers are stabilized and under cover, as shown in the picture on the far right. And lastly, the picture of the tractor shows placement of a catch can as a best management practice to contain leaking fluids. On this slide, we'll talk about dry cleanup requirements. Operations are required to use dry cleanup in response to spills. This means maintaining a spill pit on site. This slide shows the basic content of a spill pit, which includes portable kitty litter, a broom, disposal bags, gloves, and bottles. Staff should be trained on how to use the spill pit as well as be aware of the pit's location. On this slide, we'll look at some best management practices for storing hazardous materials or hazmat, including fertilizers, which is considered a hazardous material. hazmat should be stored in a way that prevents contact with stormwater from above and stormwater runoff along the ground. This means that containers need to be leak-proof, undercover, and stored in an area that does not receive heavy stormwater flows. Here, we can see an injection fertilizer tank stored securely in a container that is in good condition without leaks and is placed so that it's not receiving heavy stormwater flows. And here, the second image, we can see another injection fertilizer tank with a container that's in good condition and with a catchment at the base to prevent potential leaks from the nozzle from discharging to the ground and potentially to stormwater. Then, however, on this image, you can see an injection fertilizer tube that does not have a leak-proof container and which has contents exposed to stormwater and the ground. This container will need additional best management practice. And here we see some dry fertilizer bags that are stored securely out of the path of stormwater and undercover, although it's hard to tell, there is a roof over this storage area. And then conversely, here we see dry fertilizer bags that are exposed to stormwater and will need additional investigation purposes. Lastly, here we see some non-stormwater on the ground. This pink liquid is actually flour dye that the farmer was pouring on the ground as their way to dispose of the waste. In this situation, we work with the farmer to let them know that this is not an effective way to manage the waste and that it needs to be managed to prevent discharge to stormwater. In this situation, we provided information regarding resources for small businesses to properly dispose waste. That link and QR code is on the last slide. Sorry, the presentation is not correct for you. It should, but before we move on to this slide, I want to point out that while all hazmat needs to be stored out of stormwater flows and covered to prevent mixing with stormwater, secondary containment is not always required. Secondary containment means a secure catchment that has the capacity to hold the full amount of the contents held by the primary container. Secondary containment is required if there's history or significant risk that the contents of the primary container will spill out of that container. As a note on the last slide, there were no secondary containment examples. On this slide, we're going to talk about best management practices for managing agricultural materials and stockpiles. These should be managed to prevent mixing with and discharge to stormwater. Best management practices include knowing how stormwater flows across your property and locating materials and stockpiles out of areas that have heavy stormwater flows. It includes regularly monitoring your materials and stockpiles to ensure whatever practices you're implementing, that these are effectively preventing discharge. Best management practices include using berms to convey stormwater around piles, tarps to cover piles, straw bottles, and other barriers to prevent discharges. The picture on this slide shows how a farmer decided to prevent a stockpile from discharging. The take-home point here is to have effective best management practices and to regularly monitor your materials and stockpiles. On this slide, we're going to talk about the paperwork requirement for stormwater training. All sites affected by the agricultural water quality program are required to conduct and document annual stormwater training. During site inspections, we check for training documentation. We also provide stormwater training materials to operations during these inspections. And you are also welcome to access the materials online using this QR code. And these are available in threshold languages, but please let me know if you need an additional translation into any other languages. The form used to document this training is available online and is also in the packet that you have today. I just wanted to emphasize that we only verify training during site inspection, so there's no need for you to preemptively email or send that form to us. We'll check for this when we do site inspections. On this slide, we're going to talk about best management practices to prevent erosion and sediment discharges. Best management practices include knowing how stormwater flows across your property, preventing erosion and sediment discharges, maintaining, repairing, and upgrading erosion control best management practices as needed. Practices include installing sediment catch basins to settle out sediment from stormwater. This is also known as sand trap. Installation of culverts to convey stormwater flows under farm roads to prevent farm roads from washing out. Installing boulders or riprap to slow the velocity of stormwater. Installing gravel to fill erosional rills to prevent further erosion. Using ground cover, jute netting, mulch, hydro seeding, and revegetation of bare areas, slopes. And using silt fencing, straw wattle, hay bales, and berms. On this slide, we can see on the top some bare areas in the farm road that are eroding and discharging sediment to stormwater. These will need erosion and sediment control best management practices. On the bottom of the slide, we can see BMPs including installation of a sediment catch basin and boulder under the farm road. Boulders in a storm channel to prevent further erosion. Mulch as ground cover. Silt fencing with a berm. Hay bales. And gravel to prevent future further erosion. On this slide, we'll talk about best management practices to prevent irrigation runoff discharges. Irrigation discharges are not allowed in either wet or dry conditions. This means irrigation runoff discharge is not allowed when you're irrigating, and that irrigation runoff discharge is not allowed to collect in an on-site irrigation pond, mixed with stormwater and then discharge from the site. You'll need to manage irrigation collection ponds to prevent the contents from discharging from the site. This includes conveying heavy stormwater flows around irrigation collection ponds. To ensure irrigation runoff does not discharge, you'll need to monitor your irrigation schedule, monitor and repair irrigation lines, and monitor your irrigation channels to ensure that these are not conveying irrigation runoff from your site. Other best management practices include capturing and recycling irrigation runoff on site, such as through an irrigation collection system with tanks as seen in this image below. And as you monitor your irrigation practices, you'll want to be on the lookout for runoff that looks like this in the top left, which has lots of algae and is discharging from the site to a downstream stormwater channel. And then also in this image, you can see irrigation runoff flowing from the property to downstream areas. And then here we see irrigation runoff that is discharging to an on-site storm drain. You'll want to look out for these situations on your property and prevent this from happening. On this slide, we'll talk about best management practices to prevent general non-stormwater discharges. This includes discharge of dried leaves, trash, and other non-stormwater from your site. For these and similar best management practices we've covered so far, you'll want to know how stormwater flows across your property so that you can effectively manage the stormwater so that it flows through your property without picking up pollutants. Best management practices include removing loose sediment and waste from stormwater channels, as shown in this image. These leaves and debris needs to be removed from the stormwater channel. Removing any pipes or possible non-stormwater connections that may discharge non-stormwater from the property. As shown in this image, you'll need to ensure that these pipes are not conveying non-stormwater flows. Also, checking culverts to ensure that non-stormwater is prevented from entering into these culverts and discharging from your site. As shown in this image, you'll want to monitor discharges. And managing materials and trash to ensure that these are not collected in stormwater channels. As shown in this image, this on-site channel needs to be cleared of debris. Another general best management practice is to effectively use recycled materials on your property, so you have minimal waste that you would then need to manage. So we've covered a lot of ground on this slide. I've summarized some of the general strategies for avoiding violations, and you can refer to this later as you choose. And on this slide, I've listed resources and links that you may find helpful. There's actually representatives from each of these programs here today. So it would be a good opportunity to ask questions during the Q&A session. On this slide, there is a link and the QR code if you'd like to plug in your site address to identify the watershed that your site is located within. As a note, the watershed is different from the jurisdiction in which your site would be located. On this slide, I included a link and QR code if you'd like to plug in your site address to identify the jurisdiction. The jurisdiction will determine which local agency stormwater program would apply to your state. And for my last resource slide, here's information on managing organic and green waste. There's been some changes to how these are managed in order to divert waste from landfills. If you have questions about this, please, you are welcome to reach out to this program. Okay, so now it's time for the exercise to test your knowledge of best management practices. If you look in your packets, you'll find a loose piece of paper with a map that looks like this one on the slide and looks kind of like this. So please go ahead and take that out and refer to it over the next several slides. Virtual attendees, you can access the map through the QR code that will be on these slides. Okay, so first we're going to orient ourselves to the features of the map. In this slide, we can see that the gray area is land, that the blue area is water, and that the red lines are county maintained roads and culverts. And the topography or slope of the land is shown with round contour lines that are spaced apart every 40-foot change in elevation. The brown arrows also show the general flow of surface water. So if we look here at the high point, as we follow the slope and arrow down to the water body, we can see that the surface water flows from high to low points. Are we good on that? Yeah. Okay. So on this slide, we have the same land area, but with a fictional boundary identifying a fictional agricultural site within the black lines. Now on this slide, we can see that the agriculture site has some distinct areas. The green area is an avocado grove, the red area is a vineyard, and the pink area is where they're growing hillside flowers. And here we can see some more features of the map. The gold lines are farm roads. And here the yellow shape represents the sediment catch basin and culvert associated with the farm road, and the white lines represent on-site stormwater channels. Okay, here we go. And now we see a lot more features. I'm just going to go down the list. You can refer to the map you have in front of you. The injection fertilizer tanks are identified with the green circle containing F. The pesticide storage area is identified with the green circle containing a P. Dry fertilizer is identified with the green square with a D. The vehicle maintenance area is identified with the black box with a V. Again, the farm roads are gold lines. County roads and culverts are the red lines. The irrigation lines are blue, and there is a greenhouse with a green rectangle. The stormwater channels are the white lines. The green waste stockpiles are the yellow circles with the W. The trash receptacle is the orange square with a T. Soil and perlite stockpile is the orange star with an S. There's a retired tractor identified with the orange square containing R. There's a steep slope area with bare ground identified with brown dashed line. And a recently planted tree area with disturbed ground identified with the green dashes. So now for your part, please match the DNTs on the right or letters A through Q with the features of the map on the left. Each feature may have more than one DNT letter that applies. You'll have until the beginning of the Q&A session, so about 4:30, 4:40 to add your answers. Please put your name on the sheet and I'll be handing out Starbucks gift cards to the top 5 with the most accurate answers. Virtual attendees, I'll only be able to grade and reward the answer sheets for in person, but you're welcome to follow, use the QR code and follow along. During the first part of the Q&A session, I will be going over the answers, and I will post the answer key online after the event as well. We also have 2 10-minute breaks, so maybe you could use some of that time to fill out the sheet if you like. Thank you so much. I'm happy to answer questions during our Q&A session. As Tasha mentioned, we have a QIT box for questions, ideas, topics. If you feel more comfortable writing it down and putting it in the box. You're also welcome to email me, virtual attendees. You can email me or enter your questions, ideas, topics in the chat. And of course, during our Q&A, I'm just happy to talk to you for that, bring up whatever ideas you have. And with that, I think that's it. I'm gonna welcome Kaylin. Okay, can you all hear me? Still good? Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kaylin Smith. I am a water resource control engineer with the San Diego Regional Water Quality Control Board, which is a state government agency. Today, I will be providing an overview on the agricultural orders that we have in our agency, as well as provide you guys some information about our inspection program and common violations that we see during those inspections. So to begin my presentation, I want to provide you all with some brief background on the regulatory authority that we have through the Port of Cologne Water Quality Control Act that was passed in 1969 here in the state of California, and the Clean Water Act of 1972, which was passed by the United States government, so it is a federal statute. So the Port of Cologne Act is actually what established the water boards, and it accounts for both point and non-point source pollution, which is important in our program because agriculture is considered a non-point source discharge. So we get our authority to regulate agriculture through this law. The Clean Water Act does not provide language over non-point source discharge, so we don't use the Clean Water Act to directly regulate agricultural operations. However, some of the requirements of the Clean Water Act still indirectly affect agricultural operations in our region because they require states to list the water bodies that are not meeting water quality standards and set a total maximum daily load for those impaired water bodies. So those TMDLs can have requirements in them that affects agricultural operations. So as I mentioned, the Port of Cologne Act is what established the water boards. In the state of California, we have 9 regional water boards and 1 state water board, which is located in Sacramento. So if you look at this map, you can see that region 9 is the San Diego region all the way down in the bottom here. Maybe you can't see it because it's covered up by that little icon. Oh, I can.
Unbelievably so.
There we go.
All right.
Now you can see it down here. So the regions in our state are split up based off the different watersheds throughout the state. And so the conditions within each region are different based off the climate of that region, the topography, the hydrology, the geology. So since the conditions of each region are so different, we have different agricultural orders in each region instead of having like a statewide agricultural order. So the requirements in each region's ag order are going to be different from region to region. Sorry, my slides are not changing right now. Oops.
We don't know what it is, but something works.
So we figured it out. So in our region, we have 2 agricultural orders right now. So that's order R9 2016, which is the year the order was adopted, 0004 for growers who are enrolled under membership of a third-party group. So we are currently in the office where the San Diego Region Area Lands Group is located, and that is one of our third-party groups. We have another third-party group, the Upper Santa Margarita Area Lands Group up in Riverside County. And our other order is order number R9 2016 0005 for growers who decide not to join a third party group, they want to enroll as individuals. Currently in our program, we do not have any growers who are enrolled as individuals. 100% of our growers are enrolled through their memberships with third party groups. We are currently in the process of renewing our ag orders. So we are going to be holding a series of public workshops at some point in the future to get direct grower feedback on our orders and what you like about them, what you might not like about them, what you want removed or what changed, how you want them changed, so that we can incorporate that feedback into the revised orders that we will be preparing. The inspection program that we have should not be influenced too much by that change, however. Okay. So the mission of the water boards is to protect water quality for the health of our environment, as well as our health as humans, as people and animals. So in line with this mission, our ag orders are drafted so that the requirements in them protect water quality. When we go out on inspections, then we are checking for compliance with the ag order to make sure that all of the best management practices are being implemented to protect water quality. We might also go out to your facility if we receive a complaint about the operation. We will then go out to the site to investigate that complaint. If we have never been to your operation before, or we haven't been there in a long time and we receive a complaint, we will do an inspection that covers both of these purposes at the same time. We'll do a broad overview of the entire operation, kind of checking everything out, and we will investigate the specific location of the complaint. So we have two types of inspections. We go on site, we call up the owner or the operator, whoever manages the operation, and we schedule a time to go out to their facility and walk around with them to get all of our questions answered about how the operation is ran. And then we have that opportunity to speak directly with the owner or operator and hear any feedback they may have about the orders of the program, which is a great opportunity for us to learn both about ag in our region and for you guys to learn about what our requirements are. We also have drive-by inspections where we drive around the perimeter of the operation and see if we can notice any discharges off the site or if there's any problems we can spot from the road. And if we do see any of those issues, we would then follow up with an on-site inspection. So we can talk with you and go on your property to see what the issue is on your property, so that we can fix it and address it to protect water quality. One of the pieces of feedback that we have received the most is how inconvenient it is to be a grower who is inspected by multiple different regulatory agencies for the kind of the same problems and situations. So as a result of that, at our office, we have been working very hard to coordinate with other regulatory agencies to consolidate our inspections so that we can kind of come out at the same time or very close together, so we can kind of knock out the inspections in one go, so that you're not interrupted in your day-to-day operations any more than you need to be. Specifically, we've been working a lot with the County of San Diego's ag department, like how Kimberly put this on today. We've been going out with her and her inspectors very frequently to inspect our sites together. We have a lot of similarities in our programs in terms of what we look for. It's not exactly the same, but there is a lot of overlap. So I think it's very beneficial for everyone for us to go out at the same time and kind of look at these same areas together. And then also just look at the areas that are different, because they're not that many, and just get the inspection over with at that time, and then follow up based off any observations we made during that inspection. As Kimberly said, the County of San Diego covers the unincorporated part of the county, her department. So we are also looking into coordinating with city programs that would go and inspect or oversee the sites that are in the incorporated parts of San Diego. And then our program is also not limited to San Diego County. We have some ag sites in Riverside County and some in Orange County as well. So we are looking into coordinating with those counties too, so we can coordinate inspections with them as well. So now I'm going to start going over kind of what we look at during inspections, and I'm going to break it down one by one. What we want to see, kind of what we do see. I'll be providing multiple pictures per slide. So I believe on your handout, if you have my slides on there. Okay, they don't have them. Okay, just read it. So I'm going to be going through these pictures, and they're going to have examples of good things and bad things that I've seen in terms of management practices for each of these areas that I will be breaking down. So I want to begin with chemical storage. So like Kim was saying, we want the chemicals like the fertilizers, pesticides to be stored out of the way of stormwater flows so that the chemicals cannot mix with the stormwater
and then you carry down downstream surface waters. So we want the chemicals off the ground, under a roof covering, so that they can't be exposed to sun or rain that could damage the integrity of the container. So if you see in this picture, you can see that these bags of fertilizer right here, they are lifted up off the ground on these wooden pallets, and it is underneath a roof covering, which is good, but some of the material has spilled onto the ground, leaving a threat that when stormwater flows by, it could pick up that material and then carry it with it off-site. So we want to see some sort of expansion practices, whether that's just checking and cleaning it up, or putting some kind of secondary containment to capture it if you have something that you can put on easily. To make sure that this material is not on the ground when the rainwater comes in, you can carry it away. We also check to see if your chemicals are stored inside and they are properly locked. So if you have pesticides, for instance, this picture shows an example of chemicals that are locked with a warning label behind a gate. And you can notice that these chemicals are also stored underneath a covering, and they are on this concrete ground, which is not bare dirt. So if they use stone, they're not gonna get in the stormwater pathway, nor they can be able to infiltrate down into the groundwater because they're on a concrete barrier. This is a picture of a fertilizer injector site where the grower is mixing liquid fertilizer in these gray bins so they can be injected into the irrigation system. And this is an example of secondary containment because these red bins here are placed around the gray bins so that if the gray bins were to split or leak or spill, the fertilizer would go inside the red tubs instead of going onto the ground and running away with stormwater and getting into downstream surface waters or infiltrating into the groundwater. Finally, we also check to see that your chemicals are applied properly. We want to make sure that the chemicals are being applied according to the manufacturer's label and they are being applied at the agronomic rate. That way they can't just run off from the field that you're applying them and also infiltrate down into the groundwater or go into downstream surface water. Moving on from chemical storage, next I want to talk about irrigation system. We want to check to see that the irrigation system isn't leaking. I will ask you about what your management practices are and checking for leaks and how you respond to them and address them to make sure they're addressed as fast as possible, which I know is important for you all because water is expensive, but for us, it's important to make sure that the water isn't infiltrating into the groundwater or running off into stormwater, with stormwater into downstream surface waters. This is especially important if you fertigate your irrigation water because then that water is having all of these nutrients in it that we don't want in our groundwaters and surface waters because they can be harmful to them. So this is a picture of an irrigation system where this valve is leaking and you can see all of the water on the ground. So in this instance, we just ask the discharger to fix the leak as fast as possible and send in the picture that the valve is working and not leaking anymore. We are also concerned about the efficiency of your irrigation system. We want to minimize the amounts of runoff that can be generated from your irrigation system to minimize the risk that that runoff can then leave your property and go into downstream surface waters or infiltrate into groundwaters. So this is a picture of an ag site that has a very inefficient irrigation system and generates a lot of tailwater. As you can see, the irrigation tailwater is flowing on the site. I do want to emphasize that it is not a violation of our order to have irrigation tailwater flowing on your site. If you are having the water flow to some sort of catchment basin or recycling system, or reservoir, something like that, that's not an issue. We're just concerned about the potential threat of discharge. So then we would want to see what best management practices you have to minimize that threat as much as possible. Also, as Tim mentioned, we want to make sure that this water isn't mixing with stormwater that will be flowing on your site, because while stormwater is allowed to leave, non-stormwater is not. If non-stormwater leaves your property, it is considered a discharge. So if the stormwater mixes with the irrigation field water and then flows off your site, that mix is considered a waste, and so that discharge is considered a violation. So we want to make sure that there's some best management practices in place to keep the stormwater flow and the irrigation field water flow separate. We also check to make sure that the irrigation system is not set up or malfunctioning in a way that causes a direct discharge to surface water. So in this picture, you can see this sprinkler over here is spraying in the direction of a tributary that is to the left of the picture. And you can't see it in this photo very well, but there's another sprinkler right around here in this circle that was actually spraying directly into the tributary when I was there during the inspection. And the discharger shut off that sprinkler when he saw it, but it was spraying in at the time. So we want to make sure that is not happening. Again, especially if you are using fertigation methods, because then that means that those nutrients are directly in that water that could be spraying into the surface water body. So now I'm going to talk about stockpile management. So we want to make sure stockpiles are managed in a way that the stockpile material cannot easily leave that location and mix with stormwater and be carried away into a surface water body. So we want it to be kind of have a buffer zone between the stockpiles and any stormwater channels or stormwater flow. And we also want to make sure there's BMPs in place to hold that material there. So as you can see in this picture, this is a row of stockpiles. And there's no BMPs to hold that material in place, like no straw wattles or anything like that. And this right here to the right of the picture is actually a stormwater channel that flows through the property. So there's just an increased risk of this material that's being stockpiled going into that channel and then being carried away with the stormwater to downstream surface waters. So we want to see something more like this, where you can see the straw wattles have been staked into the ground at the base of the stockpiles. And this ensures that when the stormwater flows, the water can pass through, but the sediment material, the stockpile material stays in that location instead of being carried away to downstream surface waters. You can also use any other kind of like something to create a berm. You can use gravel bags, sandbags, whatever works best for you to achieve kind of like the same purpose of allowing the water to pass through, but leaving the sediment material in that location instead of letting it move. This is a picture of the stockpile that has a straw wattle, but it is also covered, which we like to see stockpiles covered, especially during rain events, to prevent the stormwater from hitting the material and flowing through it before it flows away from the material. So if it has this cover, it'll just hit the cover and then roll off of it instead of flowing through the material. So it won't take up as much of that material as it moves to downstream surface waters. So this is an example of a stockpile that is well covered and has straw wattles to ensure the material stays in that location instead of being carried away, which is something we like to see. As Kim said, another best management practice that you can use is to simply like locate your stockpiles out of the stormwater pathway. So if you look around your site and you notice where the stormwater flows, just have your stockpile out of that flow path so that the stormwater doesn't flow through it. So you also look for erosion control BMPs. So as you can see in this picture, the stormwater has eroded this dirt road and created this erosion row that's going down the dirt road towards this paved road near the top of the picture. And we want to make sure that you have BMPs in place to prevent this type of erosion, because we don't want the stormwater to pick up all of the sediment as it's flowing over the bare dirt in your property, and then carrying that sediment with the stormwater to a downstream surface water body. Because large amounts of sediment in surface water can degrade the aquatic life, it can harm the aquatic life, the fish, the plants in that stream, and we don't want to see that happen. So we want BMPs in place to prevent erosion. So this is a picture of an example of a grower who put gravel down over his dirt roads so that the stormwater as it's flowing doesn't pick up the gravel because it's too heavy, so it just flows down and it doesn't pick up as much material, so then there's not as much sediment to be carried away. If you can't get gravel, if that's not feasible for you, it's not feasible for you to pave your roads. You can also use wood chips or something similar to just cover the roads. You can use mulch or any other kind of vegetative cover, especially on hills, to make sure that the soil is staying in place and not being carried away with the stormwater. You can also spray your water, like dust control, you can spray water on the roads to make sure the soil stays there as well. This ties in with my next topic, which is sedimentation control BMPs. It's not possible for you to put something in place to prevent the erosion. You can also put in measures to catch the sediment before it leaves your property or before it goes into a storm drain system, like Kimberly was saying earlier. So this is a picture of a grower who puts sandbags down around a storm drain to prevent both the irrigation tailwater and the sediment from flowing through the bags and going into the storm drain, which is what we like to see, because we don't want either the irrigation tailwater or the sediment from going into the storm drain system. You can also use straw wattles for a similar purpose. You can stake the wattle into the ground, as you can see in this picture, and that allows the water to flow through, but it captures the sediment. In this picture, the pipe is capped during the dry season so that no flow can go through there, but it's uncapped during storm season so that the stormwater can flow through to the stormwater system. But again, the straw water will prevent the sediment that might be carried with that stormwater from flowing into that system. You can also put silt fences around the border of your property. So like the previous examples were around like a specific point, like a storm drain or a pipe. But you can all put something like this around the entire edge or border of your operation, so that when the stormwater is leaving your operation, it passes through the silt fence, but the sediment is kept on the other side, and so it doesn't actually discharge off. Ideally, we would like to see both erosion control BMPs and sedimentation control BMPs in place, because that maximizes the effectiveness of the BMPs and ensures that the most sediment possible is being either captured on your site or just not being moved around at all. It's just staying in place where it should be. And that minimizes the risk of any kind of sediment from getting into our downstream surface waters and harming aquatic life. You can also put vegetative cover, as you see in this picture. You have a silk fence, but you also have a lot of vegetation on both sides of the fence, so it'll help stabilize the soil so that it can't move as easily. We also look at your waste management, so we want to make sure that there isn't trash just littered around through the property. It's being picked up and properly stored in a waste container that is lifted up off the ground, has a lid so that it's not being in the way of the stormwater flow path, and it's not being introduced, or stormwater is not being introduced and then leaching out of your container and then flowing into downstream surface water or infiltrating into groundwater, because we don't want any of the pollutants that may be in that trash from getting into our water bodies. We also want to make sure that trash isn't directly in a stormwater channel, which is the case in this picture. This is some trash that's in a stormwater channel that connects to a creek and discharges directly into a creek. So our concern here would be that when it rains, the stormwater can pick up the trash and anything that's on the trash and carry it directly to that creek. So we want to make sure that this trash is cleaned up and properly disposed of. When we talk about waste, we also talk about the restroom or bathroom facilities that you have on your operation. Most of the time I see porta potties. I don't really see too many operations that have like a different kind of bathroom facility. So I'm going to talk specifically about porta potties. But we want to make sure that your porta potties have secondary containment, which in this picture here is this black like tub at the bottom of the porta potties. That way, if there is a leak or a spill or something, the waste in those porta potties go into this black tub instead of discharging onto the ground and potentially getting into groundwater or flowing with stormwater off into a downstream surface water body. I also asked during my inspections how often the porta potties are serviced, because I want to make sure that the amount of waste in those porta potties isn't going to be able to overwhelm the secondary containment measure, because in that point, like in that case, the secondary containment is kind of useless if the waste is just going to overflow anyway. So we want to make sure that they're being serviced in a timely manner. We also look at any other kind of debris that may be on your property. So this could be like drip lines that have torn, or any kind of irrigation line that is torn, or tarps, or just anything else that could be on your property that is like waste, but maybe doesn't fit in a trash can, or maybe doesn't go to the same kind of landfill that regular trash does. So you're just storing it separately. And it's totally fine to have piles of like debris for removal on your property, but we just want to make sure that it is organized, out of the way. Stormwater is not going to flow through it and pick up any of the chemicals that may be on that debris. You want to make sure that the debris is going to be removed in a timely manner and it's not just going to sit there for a long time. So these are the kind of things that we look for waste management. So I kind of went over some of the big things that we look at during inspections. I know that some of them were very reminiscent of what Kim was talking about, but like I said, there's a lot of overlap between our programs. But now that I went over all of that, I also want to go over some of the violations that I've seen. And since the mission of our water board is to protect the health of our water bodies, the big violation is a discharge of waste into the water bodies because that's directly against our mission. So waste could be irrigation runoff into sediment, which is the case in this picture that I have here. So in this instance, a grower stockpiling sediment, but the sediment spilled over the edge of this tributary and got inside the tributary, and it was partially obstructing the natural flow path of the tributary. So you can see here, the sediment was going into the tributary. You can kind of see, I don't know how well you can see it, but there's these orange and yellow lines that kind of mark that the sediment is going beyond the bank of the tributary and going into the water, and you can see that the water is being obstructed and then flowing away from the sediment. So we would be concerned about the amount of sediment that the water could be carrying with it to another water source, because like I said before, the sediment in the water, we don't know what's in it. It could just be dirt, but it could also have all these other chemicals in it. And those chemicals could affect the aquatic life and health of the water body as well as the sediment itself. So this would be considered a violation for us because it's a discharge of waste directly into this tributary where water is flowing. This picture provides another example of a discharge of waste. In this case, we have two different agricultural operations. We have one up here above the fence line on top of the sediment bank. And then we have another operation down here below the sediment bank. In this example, the operator of this operation at the top of the bank had put best management practices to prevent discharge of waste to the neighboring operation, but then the sediment bank caved in, and you can see this hole here in the fence line. So now waste from this upper operation was able to flow onto this lower operation and create this stream of green water. So even though this isn't a discharge directly into a water body, our order prohibits the discharge of waste off of your operation. So just leaving your operation and going on to another operation is considered a discharge because it is not the responsibility of this lower operation to manage your waste. And because of that, this waste can then flow off of their property and get into a downstream surface water or infiltrate down into the groundwater. It is still your waste, so it's still your responsibility, it is your violation. And these irrigation water runoff would be containing fertilizers or pesticides or any other chemicals, which is what constitutes it a waste. So now that I've gone over the violations, I want to kind of talk about what we would do if we went to your site and we did see a violation, what kind of enforcement steps we would take and how that process would work. So we always start with voluntary compliance. We want to work with you to make sure that we are addressing the problem together. So if it's like an easy fix, such as the leaky irrigation valve, for instance, we would just say, like, hey, obviously this is a problem. We need to fix it so that, you know, this irrigation water isn't discharging off your property. And then you would fix it and you would send us a picture with an email or something saying like, yes, I fixed the valve, here's a picture, it's fixed. Or if it's like lack of bean peas around a stockpile or something like that, then you would just send us a picture showing that the bean peas have been added. Something like that to just show that you have addressed the concern that we raised with you. So we always start there. Sometimes based off of what we see, we also issue what's called a staff enforcement letter or a notice of violation. These are two different letters, but legally speaking, they're kind of very similar. So they're a way for us to formally document that we did see a violation on your property. But we would still be working with you to address whatever that violation was, so that we could, you know, get it cleaned up or stop it to make sure that there isn't a discharge of waste off your site. So even though this is like a formal enforcement measure that would be on your record, it's not a fine. You wouldn't have like a monetary penalty assigned or with these letters. However, I might, based off of the specific situation, attach any of these four things to that letter I sent previously. So an investigative order is an order to direct you to investigate say a discharge of waste, what was the impact of that discharge to the surface water body that the waste was discharging to? How much waste was it? What steps are you gonna take in the future to make sure that that discharge of waste can't happen again? We pose those types of questions in the investigative order and we direct you to answer them. So even though it's not a fine, it's still gonna come at a cost to you because you have to put in that work to answer those questions. A cleanup abatement order, basically just directs you to clean up whatever discharge or waste that responded and us sending you the order. A time schedule order, puts like a timeline to it so that you have a specific amount of time where we want to see progress in cleaning it up or restoring the water body to its like natural state prior to the violation. So any of those 4 things, like I said, they're not, oh, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead of myself. A cease and desist order is something we also might send you, and that mandates you to like stop the activity that led to the discharge until further notice. So it's kind of like the most serious, or we just tell you you have to stop what you're doing until otherwise notified. So any of these 4 things, while again, they're not directly a fine that we are giving to you, might come at a cost to you because you might have to put in work to address what is in the order. Now, the last part of the enforcement progression is when we do issue a monetary penalty. And we do that through the form of an administrative civil liability or an ACL. So this program has been active since 2016, that's when the orders were adopted. So almost 7 years ago. And in those 7 years, our office has issued 5 ACLs. And of those 5 ACLs, 4 of them were for growers who just chose not to enroll in our orders despite being repeatedly notified that they have to do so. So we've only issued 1 ACL as a result of another type of violation than just failure to enroll. So we do what we can to work with you and address the issue rather than finding you. We want to just address the issue, protect water quality and work with you rather than finding you, essentially taking money away that could be going towards fixing the problem. So that's what we always want to do. Of course, it's gonna always depend on what the specific situation is and what the specific discharge is and how egregious they may be. So that concludes my presentation. I don't know if there'll be any time for questions or if we're saving them all till the end. But in either way, I'll be here during the office hours to answer questions. My supervisor, Ben Neal, is also sitting back there and he will be here to answer questions. My colleague, Abigail Pashina, could not be here today. But all of our contact information is on the screen. If you want to write it down or take a picture, you're always free to call or email us to ask any question that you may have, or if you want to provide feedback on the ag orders, because you're in the process of renewing them. We are available if you have questions. So thank you so much, and I guess I will pass it off to Jerry.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jerry. I am the production horticulture advisor for San Diego County with the University of California Cooperative Extension, which is the best kept secret in the whole hidden gem in the whole University of California system, and proudly so, proudly so. Today, I am gonna talk about stormwater. Can I stand? I think I have some, I cannot pass the mark, but I can walk around. So for those of you that are still awake, I prepared a presentation about stormwater in nurseries and greenhouses, because that's my clientele. So let's see how many greenhouse growers I have in the room today. 1, okay, that's great. everybody else can just listen along. And I have some pictures there. Who wants to tell me what's wrong with this first picture? What's wrong with this picture here? What's to tell me? What's to tell me? So what? No containment. No containment. How about what are these containers used for? Can I get pesticides? Who said pesticides? Thank you. So when the inspectors come to your operation and they see those, do you think they have a sense of humor about it? Not really, right? Not really. How about what's wrong here? What's wrong here? Who wants to tell me what's wrong there? There is this manhole here where the water flows into. But you see the water, what does it pick up on its way? It's the manhole. Sediment, who's that sediment? It's all muddy there, right? So it turns out that the inspectors don't have much sense of humor about sediment, about water traveling through your operation and picking up sediment. Why? Who wants to tell me why? What's the problem with sediment? Why sediment? If nobody answers, we'll ask them, I guess, they're in the room. What kind, very good answer. What kind of contaminants? Which ones?
All kinds of chemicals that attach.
All sorts of junk, all sorts of junk. Which kind of junk that is associated with fertilizer? What kind of nutrients? Really like to.
Nitrate, phosphorus.
Phosphorus. Who said phosphorus? Did it? Good answer. Phosphorus. Turns out that phosphorus really like to stick to sediments. And then there's also some categories of pesticides like organophosphates and pyrethroids and other stuff that you don't care about that are not soluble and they stick to sediment a lot. And so all this stuff travels with your sediment, travels actually with your water in the sediment, and it goes and it ends up in some river or in some lake or in some lagoon or something, and goes out there and kills some little wildlife, some shrimp or something. I don't even, what does it kill? Some shrimp? Fish, it kills fish. Turns out it kills fish. And so that's why you want to get rid of sediment. What could you do there? What could you do there? Mulch it. What else could you do there? Nobody really?
Actually,
Some protection around the inlet, some protection about the manhole. But even better, I have here my esteemed colleague, engineer that worked for NRCS. What could you do? What could we do there, Isabel? What could we do there?
You can add rock, you can create a sediment.
You could add rock. You could add rock.
A sediment basin.
A sediment basin. A sediment basin. Could we also do an underground outlet?
Yes.
Let's put it underground. You could put it underground, right? You have this thing, you have this area where this water somehow likes to travel through, right? Whether it's stormwater or irrigation water, we don't know where the water comes from, but it's certainly traveling there. It's creating erosion, it's picking up sediment, it's picking up all sorts of junk, and then it falls into that manhole and goes and kills that little shrimp, right? That fish, right? Instead, we can call our helpful friends from NRCS and we can dig a trench and put a big old pipe and all that water falls into a manhole, and now it does not have the opportunity to pick up all the junk that we have on our property anymore. Does it sound like a good idea? Who thinks it's a good idea?
Yeah.
All right, at least one person. Yes, sir.
Water on site.
Say again?
Is there an opportunity to keep the water on site?
Could you keep the water on site? I guess so. You could build some big detention ponds. You could have it in. Right, just not the let's not talk about infiltration. Who in the room is in charge to protect groundwater? All right, so let's not talk about infiltration. I don't want to get myself in trouble because Ben is here and I want to get in trouble. What do they do here? What do they do here? What did they do here? What are those funny standing pipes there? What's the function? What are these funny spillways there? What did they do there? Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? Why did they do it? What's the function? Where are the engineers? Help us. Isabel, come here, tell us.
It's collecting water.
It's collecting water. Why? What's the function of those pipes that are vertical there? Those standing pipes. So the water comes in from those beds, right? Those are, I think they're blueberries, and we have water flowing through here, right? And they got to those small sedimentation basins, right? And so the water gets here, and more water comes, and the water level keeps growing. But in that time, it has time for the sediments to settle out of solution, right? So it gives time, it slows down the velocity of the water, and it turns out that the capacity of the water to carry sediment is a function of its velocity. So if it slow it down, then the sediment falls out of solution. Then the level keeps growing. At a certain point, it hits the pipe, and it falls inside the pipe. Does it make sense? Who thinks it makes sense? All right, nobody thinks it, only myself. When it falls into the pipe, that pipe is connected to an underground pipe that runs here and collects all that water, right? And then if the water that gets to this basin is larger, is faster than the capacity of that pipe to convey it, then it spills over to the next one, and then to the next one, and then to the next one. Does it make sense? Instead, they would just have a big old ditch there, and the water would just run through, right? And if it's not lined, then it would create a lot of erosion, and it would pick up a lot of sediments. Who's bored? Somehow speaking, but I don't have a lot of clientele in the room for today. So next slide. Sign up for my email updates if you're a grower. If you're not, send me an email anyway, I guess. Today, I want to stress this difference about stormwater and irrigation runoff. They're two different beasts. They're very different. Stormwater runoff is something that happens for 2 hours on a Thursday night between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. It's very concentrated, it happens in a very short time, and it's very, very difficult to manage. So if you're not there, hopefully you're at home sleeping. And if you're not sleeping, I hope you're having fun if it's 2 a.m. Right? So it has a very high flow, and that's something that we call a hydrograph. You know, how you plot the flow in time. And when you study hydrology, there is something that has to do with the geometry of the landscape that concentrates this water, which we do not care about. But it's a very concentrated flow in a very short time, as opposed to the irrigation runoff, that it's something you can depend on, right? The irrigator is irrigating block 1. When it's done irrigating block 1, it starts irrigating block 2, and then block 3, and block 4. So you always have this flow, that is low flow. I get 30 gallons a minute coming down from the hill, and at the bottom of the hill, I can build a pond where I capture that water, and I can treat it, and I can reuse it. And so I can call some guy and say, hey, we want an ozone system that can treat 50 gallons a minute, so I can re-inject it in my irrigation system. Does it make sense? How many of you are sleeping already? All right, all of them. Nobody responds. So next slide. Why this thing doesn't work? Okay, so these are the rules in this county. And the interesting thing is that in other counties are different, or in other regions of the regional board. Your irrigation water must stay in your property. You cannot discharge one drop. Not one drop of irrigation water. It doesn't matter if it has pesticide, it doesn't matter if it has fertilizer, you cannot discharge it. Right? Is that right? Am I saying right? Okay, I can lose my job over this subject. So also, we don't know if you can percolate, we don't know if you have to line your ponds, that's kind of a gray area. That's kind of a gray area, nobody knows, nobody knows. Certainly I don't. Certainly I don't. But in terms of surface water, irrigation water cannot leave your property. Conversely, stormwater can leave your property, but it can be only rain. In other jurisdictions, they tell you, well, you have to pick up, you have to be able to capture the first half inch of rain. You have to be able to capture the first inch of rain. Because they're worried about that flash. You know, that first big flash, and they say, well, you have to build a big pond to pick up all that rain, to capture all that rain. Then the second inch, the third inch, it doesn't matter because the big flash and flashed already all the junk. But here, you can let it go. Luckily, we don't have to capture it. But it cannot have no sediment, no nitrate, no pesticide, no other pollutants. Cannot have all that stuff. So then the question becomes, how do I avoid that the water traveling to my property picks up? Oh, it works now. Picks up all that stuff. How do I do? Well, you could collect the runoff from your roof, from your concrete pad, from your parking lot, from any impervious surface. We put a pipe connected directly from the gutter, and NRCS has a practice called
Underground outlet.
underground outlet, but it also has another practice connected to roofs that is called run
structure.
Thank you, roof runoff structure. Is that right? Maybe right, maybe right. Where they help you connect to the gutter of your greenhouse or of your building, of your shed or of your something. So now that water, you don't give it an opportunity anymore to start moving on your property when it can pick up junk. You capture it from there. And hopefully you put it on a ditch, you put it somewhere where it cannot pick up junk anymore. You can vegetate surfaces. Turns out that if you plant grasses, the infiltration rate is a lot better. But check this out, what they did in this case, it didn't work, right? You still get erosion in the middle. So they should have seeded it earlier and for more area and let it establish. So some practices can also pay. We have mentioned mulch, gravel, weed maps, etc. You can line channels or ditches with concrete and with other stuff so they don't pick, so the water doesn't pick up sediment anymore. And then RCS has a practice called 468, lined waterway, where they line your waterway, right?
Yes.
Yes. They line your waterways. So now the water cannot pick up sediment anymore, create erosion anymore. What did they do here? Which one is better? Or are they both equally bad? Well, at least they put the weed mat on one side, right? Here's bad because look at all this erosion here, right? Tough audience tonight, man. Everybody's sleeping. You guys, I can't vote for the government. On this side is better, right? Which side is better? All right. How about this? What was all these rocks for? What are all the rocks for, Elizabeth? I think they call it retrap. What's retrap for?
To slow down the energy of flow.
So slow down the flow of water. You see, and all these rocks, they were supposed to be here in front of where the water comes out from its culverts, right? But now they're not there anymore. And their job is to slow down that water. How am I doing on time? Check this out, they didn't clean it, that's right. Well, the riprap is supposed to stay there. The job of the riprap is just rock.
Trash and stuff getting stuck in the riprap.
That maintenance, right? That's the maintenance that you have to do, and now it's October, and the weather forecast says that next week we're gonna get an inch of water. So now all hands on deck and to be prepared for the rains, right? So that's why I stress preparation and prevention. Exactly, and probably more than added some more. Okay, this is what I mentioned about you pick up the water directly from the gutter, and here they brought it down, but it goes on a here directly on a ditch that it just has a weed match. In this case, also weed match. In this case, they put gravel there, which is a good idea. In this other case, they put a PVC pipe. Even better, right? So now the water is in a pipe. You cannot create erosion anymore. In this case, they line the ditch with concrete. They don't have the pipe to bring it down, but they put this foot so the water is supposed to fall there and splashes all over the place. But at least they do we like that, Isabel? Is it a good practice?
In some cases.
In some cases. I will never get a 100% approval rate. What happens here? What's this white stuff? What's this weird stuff here? Who wants to tell me? Nursery man, nursery people. Do it again? Perlite. Perlite! What's the problem with perlite? Do it again? It floats. Now it floats over the water, right? So now it doesn't settle out of solution anymore. Right? So then there's some techniques that you can put some backhoes and skin it from the surface of the water. Detention ponds, they can be lined with pond liners, they can be non-lined. How much rain should I expect? How much rain did you get this year? Yes, sir, question.
Oh, just about the examples you showed, I didn't see a lot with vegetation. Is there some issue with using vegetation to cover the area?
That's an
Riparian
interesting
plants,
question.
natural.
So vegetation is a great idea. A great idea because it improves the infiltration rate, it slows down the water, it uses nutrients, right? I have a plant there, it uses some of that nitrate that I don't want that it falls into some kind of creek. It uses that pesticide. It provides surfaces to which sediments and to which pesticides can stick onto, so they remain there. For a number of reasons, it has roots that keep the soil together so there is no erosion. What else do you want? It does it all. It's the best thing. Unfortunately, we don't see it a lot. Because it's kind of, it's this nasty thing, and now it becomes your worst enemy, right? Now you see that this stuff, it becomes a weed. You know, it goes all over the place. Now you have to, now I'm spraying glyphosate to kill that plant that I seeded last month. So sometimes it's a challenge, but it's a great idea. Did I answer your question? I take it as a yes. How much rain should I expect? That's a picture of $10. Give me the right answer, we'll win $10. How many inches of rain did we get this year?
10 inches.
In Escondido, wrong. 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 It's incredible what you can get people to do for $10. This year, this year we got Cines, according to the Cine station in Escondido, we got, which is this red line, 16 inches. Cine station in Miramar, 16. Midway would have said more. And the Torrey Pine, 17. So it was surprising to me too, but I wouldn't have had $10 if the answer was easy. But check this out. How variable I went back to 2000, so here you have 23 years of rains in San Diego, in Escondido, in Miramar, and at Torrey Pines. And it's striking how variable it is. Would you have guessed that it can go as low as 3? You would have. Well, I guess I would have lost $10. But as low as 3, as high as 16, right? So now I'm a nurseryman, I'm a grower in Escondido. How many inches I can expect? It's all over the place. It's all over, another part of California, you know, like we got 20 inches, we got 15 inches, we got, right? So it's all over the place. But there is one thing you can count on, and here I'm plotting the daily data, the daily rains for the same period. The only thing you can count on is that every year you will get at least 1 inch. Even if we don't get a lot of rains, you will still have to battle. You will still have to battle with a storm that rains 1 inch of rain, which is a lot of rains. So even if you don't get a very rainy year, you're still screwed because there's still be that night in the middle of December at 3 a.m. where you get a 1 inch worth of rains that create a big problem in your nursery. So why don't we catch it? Could we catch it? Could we catch all that rain and put it in a tank? Could we? Who wants to tell me? Is there an RCS practice about that? I think so.
Put it in a tank.
Yeah,
I
I want to say yes. I want to say yes. Now, check this out. This is a nursery around here whose name will remain untold forever. But this big house is about 1 acre. So if you get 1 inches of rains over an area of 1 acre, what volume of water do you get? 1 acre inch. How many gallons are those? Thank you, doctor. Thank you, doctor. 70,000. So you need a big 25,000 gallon tank like this one. It's huge. Where do you put it? And it only captures 1 inch. What if you get another rain after that? Or I guess you can get, well, next time. So what do we do before the rains come? We clean the ditches, we empty the sediment trap, we put the brick trap back where it belongs. We tell the guy to clean up all his junk. We redirect flows because they don't want us to mix irrigation with stormwater. So when the rains come, we have to go there and close these and open there and redirect flows so the rain doesn't go into the irrigation and makes it overflow and then it goes into the creek, we get in trouble. 20% trap. If it looks like that, it's not doing its job. It's supposed to be all empty here. Supposed to be all empty here, right? The water is supposed to be this level is supposed to be way low, right, Isabel? Thank you, Isabel. I love it when you approve, when you look with those eyes of approval. I'm running out of time. My friend Ola Dukovic up in Ventura did this project where they said, okay, could we vegetate? Vegetate. Joel was right. We could vegetate with barley, we could use mulch. Dr. King was right. We could use polyacrylamide, we could use fabric. They all work, but it turns out the barley was the cheapest. The problem is that then later you have to deal with this barley somehow, then it becomes a weed. But other than that, it's the cheapest solution. With this, yes, sir.
Is it cheapest if you factor in the fact that you need to add water to maintain?
Maybe not. That's a good point.
You got a real high cost of water here.
That's a good point. So then that would make the other practices such as mulch or fabric or polyacrylamides the best choices. With this is my contact information. please complete the evaluation, tell me that I'm great or tell me that I'm terrible. It honestly doesn't matter too much, but my bosses want me to ask you to complete the evaluation. And with that, thank you, everybody, and see you next time.
Under this program, and here are some requirements, eligibility that will make you eligible for our programs. You must be an agriculture producer. That includes feed, food, and fiber, and then under this program, you can provide financial and technical assistance. Usually in this program, our contracts are as short as 1 year or 10 years. Every applicant does go through a ranking and selection process. And we do offer beginning farmer and limited resource farmer opportunities. There's also an AGI limitation, and I also wanted to highlight that through this program, through our programs, we do have a cultural resource evaluation process. I wanted to highlight this because the practices I'll be discussing are ground disturbing, which means that there's most likely going to be a cultural resource evaluation, which unfortunately could take up from 12 to 18 months, which is everyone's favorite part. So starting off with the practices, as mentioned by the other presenters, mulching is one of our top 5 that of the practices we provide, and what it is, it's just the temporary soil stabilizer or erosion control practice. Some of the materials used are grass, hay, wood chips, wood fiber, etc. And with wood chips being the #1 popular material that is used. When and where is it used? It is often used where temporary seating cannot be used because of the season or climate. Or if you're located in San Diego County, you don't want to water any more seeding than your crop. So that's when we do mulch. It's recommended to be put on steep slopes and any bare ground and on roads as well. What's considered when implementing our mulching practice is that the areas must be inspected because often material could be lost, and then it's important as a maintenance to be replacing that material. Some materials do require like a binder, netting, or tracking of the material to the ground. Some field examples here, as you can see, mulch could either be applied just around the wetted area perimeter of your crop, and or if it's not, and the circle could be a straight line on grapevines. And this is because, again, they don't want your irrigation water to be mixed in with your stormwater. So mulch really helps keep that irrigation water in place and infiltrate into your soil for irrigation purposes. Some more examples here of mulch in a vineyard. As you can see, the road on the left is pretty flat, and there's little to no erosion, just a little bit of some rills happening here. But that's because the mulch is helping keep that water on the plant instead of running off. Some more examples here. So you can see that on this left side, the planting is on a very steep slope. So instead of just adding mulch around the plant, the mulch is added along the whole hillside to prevent erosion and sediment coming down. As well on the other page, there's this road here that has some mulch to minimize the erosion. Some more examples of mulch on roads. The next practice I'd like to highlight is our underground outlet, which has been mentioned by all our previous speakers today as practice code 620. Our underground outlet could be flexible or rigid pipe installed beneath the ground surface to convey surface water to a suitable outlet. In some cases, it can be placed on the ground surface when topography calls for it.
And then I'll show some examples of what I mean about bringing it onto the ground surface instead of it being underneath. When and where is it used? It's used to carry runoff from the top to the bottom of the slope. It can be used as the outlet of a sediment basin. It can also be used with rolling dips, lined waterways, sediment basins, etc., other conservation practices. What to consider when implementing this underground outlet practice is that your inlet must be stabilized, discharge must be slowed down with riprap. The underground should be inspected after any major storm. If necessary, a head wall, riprap, sandbags will be needed at the inlet. And I'll show a couple examples of our inlets that we approve of. So here are some examples. As you can see, these underground outlets are used to mitigate or get rid of erosion or control erosion happening on your farmland. In this case, the underground outlet is used alongside our rockland waterway practice. It's just a little before and after. You're seeing what's on the right on your form. Please contact us. We'd love to get out there and help it. Which will also help control sediment. And here's an example of when the underground outlet comes onto the surface, and that's just you hit bedrock, and you can't like trench underneath. And when this happens, we do require that the pipes be tied down with T-post and wire onto the surface so they're not moving. And then the picture here in the middle kind of shows in cases like this where the pipe does have to come out of the ground, how it's directed into the inlet to the capture the water that's just not running off. Where on the far side, you can see a different type of inlet where a pipe is coming from the south side and then it's gonna continue. That same inlet box has an inlet for it to keep going down the slope. Some more examples of what some inlets look like. They could be as fancy as these concrete blocks or just some riprap with cement. Just another point of view where you could, on the left side, you see all the road eroding off and stuff and after every storm event and how it looks after once the underground outlets have been implemented. And then this is another example of how our practices can be combined together to come up with a great conservation plan for your property. On the left side, you can see that the pipe doesn't come all the way into the inlet box, but they've added some rock and concrete to kind of just slow down the flow as it goes into the inlet box and then continue going down the slope. And on the right side, you can see how our access road practice code 560 is used to grade the roads so that the road water is directed into the inlet boxes and then going into the underground outlets. Kind of just wanted to show another point of view. On the right side, you can see how the roads looked before any of these practices were implemented. And on the left side, you can see how clean and nice the roads look after some road grading, some installation of underground outlets and some sediment basins. Here's where sandbags were used to keep sediment out of the inlet boxes, and then just an example of an inlet box. Also here, another example of some root erosion on the right side and the underground outlet being put in place to mitigate this. And then here as well, where you have a diversion just on the way the crop was planted, kind of like on the contour that diverts water, your runoff, your irrigation runoff into this small catch basin that then has a inlet for an underground outlet, so that you separate your irrigation runoff from your stormwater. Okay, and I spoke a little about water and sediment control basins, so that's another practice we offer, our practice code 638. What it is an excavated settling pond or earthly embankment placed at the end of a waterway pipe or just the bottom of the slope. When and where is it used? It's used in conjunction with other conservation practices such as culverts, underground outlets, tidal waterways, and other channels. And what to consider when implementing this practice is that the basin must be large enough to allow the sediment to settle and should have the capacity to store the collected sediment until it is removed. With that being said, the basins should be accessible for periodic maintenance and sediment removal. And the volume storage depends on the amount of intensity of expected water, which now we know from Gary's presentation could be from 1 inch to 16 inches here in Oswego. Here's an example. On the left side, you can see before how it was just kind of ponding and muddy. And on the right side, you can see how it was excavated. I guess the angle that I have it doesn't really show too much excavation, but it's excavated, and it also shows how this practice is used alongside with underground outlet and rock lined waterway, where the underground outlets onto the rock waterway slows down the flow before it comes into the sediment basin to then again help with the filtration of the sediment, so it really settles off and then flows into an inlet of an underground outlet that's here, this black part, which then will bring it down slope into, it'll stay in the pipe, or it could go into rock, and then in this case, it continues for like 100 feet in pipe, then outlets into a rock-lined waterway, which then outlets into a grass natural waterway. Here are another examples of sediment basins. These don't have inlets, they're just kind of capturing runoff coming down the slope. And the outlets are the culverts, which are then bringing the water across the road so that the roads are not being washed off and sediment just gets settled there and it's going to take it down. Our other practice that I like to highlight is our stream crossing practice code 578. This practice is either a bridge or a culvert that crosses a stream or water course to provide controlled access for both people, livestock, equipment, or vehicles. When and where is it used? It is used if water flow cannot cross the access road without causing erosion. And a bridge and a culvert can be used both together in this practice. To consider, it must include riprap or apron on the downstream to dissipate flow energy, and the culverts should be inspected regularly, of course, after any major storm event. Here's an example of perhaps my first big project that I worked here in Oswego County, where we use this stream crossing practice, both the bridge and the culverts. So here's kind of, the left side is kind of the ending, like the end result. The right side is in the construction stage still. And here's a little before and after of what the inlet looked, what the inlet looked before, before it was two culverts that were just broken down. The water was, the road was being washed out and it was breaking down, and the flow where any big storm event came across, it was just collecting a lot of sediment, and then it wasn't really being mitigated. So we included these culverts and stream crossing so that that the bankment wouldn't keep eroding and the flow could continue on naturally flowing. This is what the outlet looks like. As you can see, we included riprap at the end just to slow down the flow energy. And you can see how the picture on the left was taken around March, which kind of during little after the big storm event we had earlier this year. You can see, how it worked perfectly. The water's just flowing a lot slower and, we have some abatement on both sides. And it's not being washed. Another thing to consider when using our practice, since, we can't really, dictate how much flow or is it come from a storm event, we do require like signage that say like, do not enter the flooding. That's just regulations we have for our practices. I think the final practice I would highlight is the line waterway and outlet practice code 468. What it is a channel or protected outlet section with a lining of either riprap, concrete, synthetic turf, or other permanent material, and it provides safe conveyance of runoff or other flow concentrations without causing erosion or flooding. And when and where is it used? It could be used to convey runoff from the bottom or top of a slope. And it could be used to divert flow into a suitable outlet, which could be a sediment basin, an underground outlet. A sediment basin can either be the inlet or outlet of a waterway. And what you consider when using or implementing this practice is if using riprap, the line waterway must have a geotextile fabric lining it underneath. And the waterway should have a positive grade entirely to avoid collection of water. Some examples here of just a waterway, and in this case, this waterway, the ground before this, the ground was bare, and as you can see on the right side, there's a county culvert there that was on the farmer's property. And it was just after every storm event, it was just getting plugged up with sediment, and then he was like out of compliance with sediment leaving his property. So we installed this confined waterway to help slow down the water flow and filter out the sediment before it left his property. Here's another example. This one's pretty long. As well, this is just the waterway starts after the outlet of a culvert that crosses this road here. And yeah. Other examples, as said earlier, the waterways could be concrete or it could be rock, which is mostly common here. Oh, in farmland, and in this example, it's the waterway is working as a energy dissipator after a underground outlet. And then you can kind of see some sediment build up here, how it collects it. And of course, yeah, it has to be cleaned out. And that is all I have for you. I will be here during the Q&A if you guys have any questions or.
Hello, everyone. So now something a little bit different. I'm Daniel Desrick. I'm a senior agricultural standards inspector with San Diego County Department of Agriculture with Pesticide Regulation. This is Josh Foley. We're both going to be going over a bit of some pesticide laws and regs and some updates on some things related to that. Just to get an idea of kind of the room here, how many people here use pesticides as part of their operation or business? Okay, so probably about half your stuff. Okay, good. So hopefully there's going to be something beneficial here for you guys to pick up on. Can you guys all hear me okay? I hope that's right. Okay, cool. So a little bit overview of what we're going to be over today. Again, we're a little low on time, so we're going to be going pretty quick and trying to truncate this. So going over some licensing changes, general personal protective equipment requirement updates, because those are always the most important thing that we need to remind people of, and then quickly reviewing some storage of pesticides and disposal processes. So this year, starting in January 2024, the federal regulations are changing on what basically qualifies for certification processes of different pesticide licenses. In essence, it means all the other licensing things often had to get updated, so there shouldn't be changes to that. Don't really, specifically the licenses that are gonna be affecting our private applicator certificates or PACs, qualified applicator licenses, QALs, and qualified applicator certificates, QACs. Does anyone in here specifically have private applicator certificates or someone in their business or operation? Okay, some of you, okay. So some of that is gonna be the most important parts for you guys to pay attention. So part of these changes, it means is that the exams that have previously been done for these PACs, which these are licenses that are issued through the county. Those changed this year. If you have not, if you have a PAC exam, or someone in your operation hasn't, and they have obtained the PAC prior to 2023 through an exam, they've taken the exam before 2023, they will need to take the exam again. Your PAC will be valid until it expires, but after that, you will not have the normal continuing education unit renewal option. You have to take a new exam to get a new PAC. After that, you can still do the standard continuing education credit and stuff like that. But this could affect people greatly if they're not aware of this change, so they need to make sure is anyone that this affects, they are aware of this change. The other change for that is those who, the few people that actually have fumigants along with the PAC, they now also have to take a special fumigant category exam along with the regular exam. Before it was just one PAC exam that you had. Now there's like basically an additional exam you have to have on top of that if you're going to be using any fumigant at all. It's probably not affecting anyone here. I will move on. If it does, please contact our department and we will help you out with that. The other major changes to it are with the qualified applicator licenses and certificates, so QALs and QACs. These are the licenses that are issued through the state, through California Department of Pesticide Regulation. Us, as our department, the county is not involved with issuing these at all, but we are making sure people are aware of these changes because this could greatly affect your business if you are not aware of these changes. So these categories basically are getting reworked. You can see the ones on the screen, the N, L, M, P, and O are either being integrated into other categories or removed. So people that have those current categories with their licenses, they're gonna have to adjust themselves on how they are doing their work. Perhaps they're gonna be needing to take a new exam to continue doing their work. In addition to that, part of the integration, there are two new categories that are coming out. The new L for soil fumigation and M for non-soil fumigant. So basically they apply to anyone that does those sort of pesticide application in those settings. If you have a QAL or QAC and you need to be, you're involved with any of that stuff, please be sure you are looking into getting these new the new exams, because starting in January 2024, your current licenses, if they are based on this, will not be valid. Question?
Yeah, they're following this situation because we're a pest control advisor, and I understand it goes into effect January 1, but the study guide isn't available yet. How are they gonna reconcile that?
From my understanding, what I've heard from the state is their testing is gonna be starting in July. Yes, yeah, so contact them, they're the ones that handle all that, they should be providing that information and.
That would they be this role in our organization, because we follow it very tightly as that. The study guide unavailable, the test potentially will be available later, but then unfortunately goes to effect next year regardless, which doesn't make sense, but that's government, I guess.
Yep, that's unfortunately, that's what the situation is, and I understand and
You feel my.
feel you're frustrated with that, I get it, yeah. Again, that's all the states.
You're aware of that, so that could be an issue going into 2024.
Yes, which is also part of why we are taking this extra step in informing people, because like, we want people like you to be on top of it. So as soon as it's available, you can start. Because I know there's always people, even with the renewals, wait till December. And it takes a while to get those things updated, so they're held up without having a valid license, so. Great that you're aware of it, and hopefully that stuff could be in place soon, so you guys can actually take those exams and get it updated. on there, but again, that's fortunately, we aren't involved with that at all. If I could do something very long, I could, but
I guess the question I had to follow up with that, maybe DPR correction, if we sell like aluminum phosphide.
Yeah.
Used for squirrels and gophers.
Right.
So 2024 January, let's say it's tomorrow. Are the people that are buying it now not gonna be able to buy it January 1, 2024, unless they have this new documentation?
correct. Yeah, because to buy that, they will have to get a new restricted material permit from us,
Right.
and we will not be issuing it to them until they have that correct license, because we can't issue that, right?
But I guess it makes you both sides.
Yeah. On there, yeah, so unfortunately, we've had situations where we're held up based on it, like, I would love to give you this, but I can't do it until they have their stuff in order.
Or buy it, or you can now store it as an end user, just so you have it in stock.
You could, but then you still couldn't legally apply.
Okay,
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah. So I wouldn't suggest doing that.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Thank you.
okay, yeah, any questions on their contact DPR's license? Their information is available on their website, and I will turn it over.
All right, thank you, Daniel. I'm just gonna be going over some proper personal protective equipment requirements. As you can see here, this guy's all decked out. He has a hard hat, face shield, coveralls, nitrile gloves, and he's using a pressurized hose line sprayer. And it's important that he has all that PPE on, because if that hose line were to break, he'd be protecting his eyes. Everybody only gets one set of eyes, and you have to protect that. All right, label required PPE. It may include eye protection, which includes glasses, goggles, or a face shield, gloves, respirator, footwear, headgear, apron, or coveralls, and it also may list nothing. But if you are a employee, you're still required by regulations to wear glasses and gloves. Where are the PPE requirements found on the label? Does anybody know? It's in the precautionary statement section. Let's see, and the precautionary statement section lists information on human and environmental hazards, has first aid instructions and information for physicians. And it has, of course, PPE requirements. Here's an example down here. Long sleeve shirt, long pants, chemical resistant gloves, and we'll specify which barrier material, usually to the right, nitrile, butyl, rubber, neoprene, or barrier laminate, which are those trash bag looking gloves. And then shoes plus socks. Let's see, why review the label? Companies get bought out, product manufacturers change. Product EPA number could stay the same, but label instructions could change without a big announcement. So they're kind of expecting you to read the label and stay up to date with the rates, sites, and PPE. Product EPA registration number could change. And that is definitely needed for accurate pesticide use reporting. All right, regulation required PPE. It's required even if it's not required by the label. So it applies to employees only. So if you're the owner operator, you just need to follow the label. An employer shall assure PPE is worn. Chemical resistant gloves need to be 14 mil thickness, and protective eyewear needs to be worn with the ANSI 87.1. Put the wrong one. Ew. All right, protective eyewear requirements must provide brow and temple protection for any of those drifting scenarios or any sort of overhead applications, just protecting the applicator so there's no pesticides coming in from the outside. As I mentioned earlier, you only get one set of eyes, not two sets. Must be identified as in compliance with ANSI Z87 requirements. And that stands for American National Standard for Occupational and Educational Personal Eye and Face Protection Devices. So the acronym is useful because it's a mouthful. Over glasses styles, if you wear corrective lenses. So yeah, if you wear glasses, you can buy PPE that goes over your glasses, so you'll be in full compliance with regulations and label. And if you're an employer, your boss should be providing this, all the label required PPE. Okay, glove requirements. If product labeling requires a specific barrier or identifies a specific barrier, it must be at least 14 mils thick. If the product labeling requires a chemical resistant gloves, they must be at least 14 mils thick, unless barrier laminate or polyethylene gloves are used. All right. And if you're confused about any of this, you can feel free to give us a call. We have an inspector on duty Monday through Friday, so we're always here answering questions. And here's those trash bag gloves I was talking about earlier. So gloves required by the label. Here's a Minx label. And this one says long sleeve shirt and long pants. Chemical resistant gloves made out of a barrier laminate or butyl rubber. So yeah, it's important to read the label first because sometimes applicators will be wearing those green nitrile gloves, but they didn't read the label and they actually need either barrier laminate or butyl rubber. So make sure you read the label. And glove liner requirements. So tasks requiring a high level of manual activity can be used, adjusting nozzles and such. Chemical resistant gloves less than 14 mils thick can be used, but it's only for 15 minutes. And then they must be discarded after each use. And then flock gloves or those with other types of non-separable liners are prohibited. Okay, label required respiratory use. Labels are now requiring a respirator when they did not in the past. We're seeing more organic products coming out, organic herbicides, and there are respiratory requirements for some of those products because of the irritation to the lungs. So it's important to make sure that you are reading the label. And then required use means employees need medical evaluations. So once they are hired, they need to have that before they start applying. They need fit testing, which needs to be done annually, to date. And training is annual as well. And then for required use, a filter change out is daily. So that's the pre-filters right there. All right. Respirator required by label. So here's an example of a respiratory requirements on the label. So mixers and loaders and applicators must wear a NEOSH approved particulate filter with any NR or P filter. So usually those are found below all the other requirements: protective eyewear, coveralls, long sleeve shirt, and such, shoes and socks. And then on a N95, the N stands for no oil, not to be used with oil or oil-based pesticides. Like a R95 means it's resistant to oils. P is oil proof, and HEPA is high efficiency, which can be used with oils. All right, storage of PPE. The employer shall provide all required PPE and clean or replace any worn, damaged, or heavily contaminated PPE in storage. Making sure everything is clean is super important. PPE is kept separate from personal clothing to prevent any sort of contamination, cross-contamination. Measures are taken to prevent any heat-related illnesses. That goes into reading the PPE requirements. On a hot day, what is legal for them to be wearing so where they're not going to be getting a heat stroke. Discard heavily contaminated materials, wash PPE separate from other clothing, and dry before storing. Assure PPE on property and handlers do not take it home. And then storage of pesticides. Okay, so permit needs to be available for any restricted materials being stored. Any person who controls the property where pesticides are stored is responsible for securing the container. No food is allowed to be stored with pesticides. You can't have your sandwich in there right next to your Thursday or whatever you have stored. Storage posted for, so the storage needs to be posted for warning or danger products. Registrant labeling needs to be on all containers that hold or have held pesticides. All lids and tops are securely fastened. Service container label needed for transporting pesticides in secondary containers down public roads to other sites. Empty containers need to be properly rinsed. And it's also important to store material with the potential to contaminate runoff in a manner that prevents contact with stormwater flows. So, I mean, yeah, we got a lot of rain, so if there was a big flood that came through the storage facility, maybe if all of those containers were on the bottom, it wouldn't have any potential issues there. Okay. And here's the storage sign requirement, and this is only for products with a warning or danger signal word. So if you're storing only caution, no sign is needed, but it needs to be readable from a distance of 25 feet. And it needs to say danger, poison storage area, keep out, keep doors locked when not in use, or verbiage similar to what that sign says. All right, I'm gonna pass it over to Daniel.
So, lots of times we have questions for people how to dispose of their proper pesticide containers. So a little bit of overview of that. So obviously, in most cases, you don't want to go and just throw them away, especially after you've used them. There's actually a procedure you have to follow, which you use them. I'm sure you're aware of it, but hopefully this will be a good reminder for them. So again, like everything with pesticides, make sure to read the labels, because lots of times they have directions on the label itself on how to dispose either the pesticide or of the container itself. Also pay attention to these requirements as their PPE requirements may change while during your disposal process. There are some products out there that don't require as much or may require different or additional PPE when disposing of those products. Even though you think it's trash, it is still hazardous. Lots of times for their plastic containers, there are recycling options of it. Again, this could also vary on where or what disposal company you are utilizing. If you have questions with it, contact your disposal company. They should be able to provide you guidelines on what they can and cannot take for recycling. Oftentimes, some pesticides come in bags or non-rigid containers. Those oftentimes can go in the trash directly. Yeah, they're not recyclable. But again, check the label and with your disposal company. Larger containers that are, especially ones that are over 28 gallons, thanks to or like the large totes on there. Some of those you actually don't dispose, you return either to the manufacturer or the vendor from the person that you purchased it from. Again, check with the product or with the vendor that you purchased from for social options on those. So when disposing of, there is an actual process that you need to do. MSB, I'm sure you probably have heard before, things of triple rinsing, but making sure that you actually triple rinse in an appropriate manner. Most times you want to fill it up about 20%. You can see a little chart up there, so I won't go over the details of it. But the other thing I do want to highlight specifically is make sure that when you are disposing of these products and you're doing your triple rinsing, plan it ahead of time. As you're filling your pesticides up and using it, you want to be able to use that rinsing. You can't just have the rinsing and dump the rinsing down the drain. You want to be able to basically, while you're mixing up your final load, integrate it back into the spray that you're using. So you can actually utilize the rinsing that you are acquiring from your disposal process and not dumping it down the drain or getting stuck with it. So essentially it's 3 times. The other thing is a lot of people think that is puncturing the container is required by law. It is not. The regulations on there is 3 CCR section 6684. The triple rinsing, all that is required. Perhaps some of the products, they say not, don't use again, they may have functional requirements on each individual label, but that's not by regulation. However, it's still very much a very good idea to puncture it or do something to make sure that that container is no longer useful. Even we've run into incidences where people have found spare containers, like, oh, I can use this for something else, and they do, and then you got a contamination issue on there. If you have a bunch of containers that you need to recycle and your current waste disposal system isn't easily used for you, we do offer recycling about every quarterly. Where we have events that you can come down into San Marcos, drop off all of your recyclable pesticides, and we will collect them for you. There's some brief information. We also have some flyers on the table if you want to refer to any of those. The other thing we're going to cover about disposal of pesticides. This is a question we get a lot of times from people that have old bottles of stuff. Maybe they are no longer used, or they're banned, or they have purchased a property and had a storage shed and had a bunch of bottles and stuff in there, and they don't know what to do with it. Well, obviously you can't throw it away. You can't dump it down the drain. It's probably something you, especially if you don't know what it is, you can't use it. You have to dispose of it through an appropriate manner. This means that you either have to go through a professional service of some sort. Some of those are oftentimes quite expensive. We recently, fortunately for the county, we actually had a couple of disposal events this year in which we were able to collect a bunch of old unused pesticides from growers and dispose of it for them at no charge, which was a great service. Glad we were able to do that. The last one we had was this month. I don't know when we're going to have our next one. I know we're not going to have any more in 2023, but I know we are planning on trying to do another one in 2024. So hopefully that will be a question. Sorry?
What are you gonna do with it?
We don't do anything with it. We actually contracted with a disposal company that collected it for us on our behalf, and they dispose of it through their disposal process. I'm not familiar exactly where it is, but they go through their proper disposal needs. So again, some of the disposal options, obviously I talked about disposal services, our department events. Also, the San Diego County Public Works does offer some small business waste disposal for pesticides and other things. If your company qualifies for it, I have the contact number on there, and this is the general information if you want to contact them and see if your business qualifies for that. And a lot of times cities, other things have general waste collectors, but that is for household waste, not for businesses. A lot of times they're kind of left out the drain, but dry. And hopefully this will be maybe something, an option for you. And that's about it. I'm sorry it was so quick. Most of the topics we could have literally talked about an entire day on, and we have gone through those trainings. Not fun. But if you have any questions, please let us know. Our contact number and information is up there. And that's it.